Hi guys. So this is a presentation of the Santa Cruz Financial Academy that I'm putting together for potential people to work with over the next 12 months. So my name is Kyle Roseman. I'm the founder of this whole program, and I'd like to talk to you today about, this program that I've created. The first one is called Foundations. We're going to go into the basics of financial structuring and how it relates to personal finance. There is a video presentation as well as written material and exercises to go through so that the students really understand what it is that we're teaching. So to begin, in accordance to the wealth wheel, there are three types of wealth: the fruits of your labor, income producing assets, and non-liquid appreciating assets used to preserve wealth. So let's take a look at the wealth wheel. Again, here we have labor dependent income. This is our productive power, our job, how we pretty much at the moment are making money, unless you're already an active investor, and that, well, at this very same time, then you're active and you're producing income. A lot of what people talk about is this cash flow independence side, where you're kind of investing in assets that can provide income in order to lessen your dependence upon your labor and your job. And then, of course, the third asset here is preservation and growth. These are non-liquid assets that kind of grow your net worth or your estate, but you can't really access them. You could, but maybe you'll get dinged. It's non-liquid, so it's not really available immediately. One thing I want to talk about is the positive effects of debt. Now, a lot of this presentation is actually in response to somebody I had in my class who brought up this point. He said, hey, I have rental properties. I paid them off free and clear. Everything that you're saying, it just doesn't interest me. I'm not interested in debt. And, on one side of the thing, he's not really exactly the person that I'm looking to work with then, because maybe he's a little bit kind of at that point in life where he's deleveraging and he is paying off his debt. And really what I'm looking at doing is helping young families, young professionals kind of graduate into that more adult side of their life, where they are managing home ownership, they're managing paying off debt. And so we really look at how to manage debt. And so this right now, we're going to take a look at the difference between real estate assets, free and clear ownership versus debt financing. So in order to determine how much or how debt affects the returns, we must first understand how profits are made from investing in real estate. And that would be through the four profit centers of real estate, which are appreciation, cash flow, tax benefit, increase in equity. So when we look at a property that is owned free and clear outright, and it's an investment property, and the whole point of this property is to increase our net worth. When we don't carry any debt on that property, it affects it like this. Our cash flow on that investment is gonna benefit fully. By not carrying debt, you have less operating expenses. You no longer have a debt service that you have to pay for. And so that's really what's happening, is the cash flow goes all the way up. However, your tax benefit is no longer in the picture, because of course the tax benefit we're talking about is the interest portion of a mortgage payment that you can write off at the end of the year. So if you don't have a mortgage with that interest that you can write off, well, you no longer get that benefit. You also don't really get an increase in equity. Now, the real estate value might go up, but if you own a property outright, you can't own it any more than 100%. So that increase in equity is no longer growing. So that growth then also disappears from the equation here. Now, appreciation is crossed out in a yellow line. That's because the value of the real estate might still be appreciating, but the return on your equity is going to be less when you own that property outright. And we'll take a look at that, well, right now. So this is what happens when you do carry debt on a real estate investment. What's going to happen to your returns here? On appreciation side of things, you're going to own the entire property, right? And you're going to benefit from the appreciation of that property. Now, let's say this property is worth $1 million, and let's say the equity you have in there is $200,000. Well, your equity portion is going to increase by the amount of appreciation that occurs on the value of the entire asset. So that means if this property is appreciating by 5%, your return is going to be that it's appreciating 5% of $1 million when you only have $200,000 actually invested. Therefore, that $200,000 is growing not at 5%, it's growing at 5% at $1 million. Now, the cash flow is going to go down. And that's something that we can control through understanding debt is, where does it make sense? We don't want to have an asset that has negative cash flow. So we're going to see, how much debt can we carry on an asset. Then, of course, we get the tax benefit because we get that interest portion on our debt service that we can write off. And our equity increases because it's constantly growing. And our tenants are paying for that growth. So one thing we want to look at as far as cash flow concerned is the cap rate. Because if we are only concerned about cash flow and we want to have properties that are owned free and clear and outright, then we're going to want to take a look at the cap rate. A cap rate, that's the ratio that is used to determine the ability of an asset to produce income compared to the price of that asset. So it just so happens that in high value markets, cap rates are usually lower, and cap rates are higher in real estate markets that are a lesser value. So a cash flowing property is going to perform better usually in not such a nice neighborhood compared to a really nice neighborhood. And that has to do with this ratio. That's what we're looking at right here. Your net operating income compared to the purchase price. So when this purchase price is really high, obviously it's going to bring that cap rate down. And that's kind of what we're looking at with high value markets. So the reason why I bring this up is because if somebody is interested, such as the person who was in my class who was talking about, hey, I've paid off all my rentals. Well, that's great, but what's the cap rate on your assets? How profitable are they? Is your money really parked in the right asset? I happen to know that in Santa Cruz, cap rates are really, really low. I mean, you're looking at, you go on LoopNet and you'll see a lot of properties with a cap rate of under 3%. And if you look in other areas, cap rates can go way up. They can be above 10%. And the only way that real strategic investors can control the cap rate in a high value area such as Santa Cruz is when they're buying properties at a major discount. And at that point, they're an experienced real estate buyer. And so they're kind of playing a different ball game than, let's say, a novice. So again, when we're looking at a property that's owned free and clear, we're seeing that it's appreciating something maybe around 6% if it's in Santa Cruz. And there's also cash on cash return. So what I want to talk about is this scenario compared to another scenario. Like, what is this person potentially missing out on? And so this is kind of the system that we're working with here. And that is to calculate the amount of debt that that asset can maintain. And so therefore, instead of owning that property free and clear, we're going to pull out equity, and we're going to put that equity into a cash flowing asset that has a higher cap rate. Let's say something at like 16%. Now we're also going to take some money here and we're going to put it in cash reserves in order to help support the entirety of this asset, as kind of a risk mitigation measure, so that, if there's any vacancies, we're not totally stressed on that. We need to have some cash reserves. That's how we manage this risk here. And so what you're going to see is with this, with all this money, this equity here, and then this equity that was in the house, now we've created a situation where there's 14% return on equity on this part here. And that is due to the optimization of all the 4 profit centers. And this becomes a growth asset. And then we've taken this amount of equity out and placed it in a higher cap rate. And so we're actually going to get more of a cash flow scenario here. And so it kind of brings us back to this wealth wheel where we have our job, our labor, we have cash flowing assets that have to do with the cap rate, and then we have preservation assets, which is a return on equity. And so this is how we really optimize our investments. I'd like to give a quick little shout out to one of my teachers named George Antone. And he a lot of what I'm going to teach here today, he introduced me to. And this in particular is kind of the roadmap to building wealth. We take on leverage, we take on debt in order to create an arbitrage scenario where we're profiting off of debt, we're profiting off of money, making money. And so we're going to create that cash flow, and that in return is going to build us wealth. So understanding how to lower your debt service, this is something that we're going to talk about big time. The loan constant, how to choose the right debt, how to choose the right loan. So imagine you need a loan for $100,000. What would you choose? First option, 4%, 15-year fixed, amortized. Second is 4.5%, 20-year fixed, amortized. We have 6%, 10-year fixed, interest only. And we have 4.9%, 30-year fixed. So there's something called a loan constant, and this is basically the annual obligation that one has to pay in order to fully satisfy a debt. And what we're going to look at is the annual debt service, all 12 months added up, and we're going to divide that by the original loan amount. And so when we look at all these, this is the loan constant that we get. This first one here at 4%, it's a 15-year amortized schedule. Our loan constant is 0.09. And it drops all the way down to a 0.05 here at loan number 4. And so that just means that basically we're taking a look at how our cash flow is affected by carrying debt, and how can we lower our obligation all the way down so that we can have a more beneficial cash flow scenario. This is what's called a spread, and this kind of goes with that. We want to bring the cost of debt down, and we want to bring our returns up. And what we get here is our profitability. We get this spread. And through this spread is really how portfolios are built. All these strategies, all these different assets here, that's what makes up a portfolio. And so when we're talking about real estate, we want the high, or really any investment, we want the highest cap rate for cash flow, and we want the lowest loan constant, the lowest monthly obligation that we pay in order to, have access to those funds that we use to invest with. And in doing that, we want to create this spread here. The bigger the spread, the more profitable. So in other words, we want to take a look at these two things here, debt and equity. An increase in debt means an increase in risk, as well as an increase in returns. An increase in equity means lower risk, as well as lower returns. So really it comes about balancing this, creating an equation where there's, the proper amount of risk and the proper amount of return. And how can we balance this and manage this and be certain about what it is that we're doing? And so once again, I just kind of wanted to show that, this is our roadmap here to building wealth. And these are really the three main categories of assets that we're looking at. We're looking at our job, our productive power, how it is that we go out every day and turn our skill into cash. Then we're going to look at different opportunities to, what's a cash flowing asset. And we're going to think about preservation. So what does investment science have to do with personal finance? Investment science helps us create spreads in our debt so that we can save hundreds of thousands of dollars over our lifetime. So what we're going to look at here again is this spread scenario, right? And we're going to just kind of see how it is that we can take this information to our immediate benefit of how our financial lives are looking right now. Remember, it's not what you make, it's about what you keep. And this system that I'm about to show you is all about it's what you keep. My goal here is really to show people how they can take control over their lives without having any increase in income. So what is a financial statement? We're going to go over this real quick before we get into that system. A financial statement refers to a balance sheet and an income statement. Balance sheet, you're looking at all of your balances, savings account, checking account. You might have a line of credit. You might have some credit cards, and you might also carry some debt. Let's say a mortgage. Let's say an auto loan. Maybe you have some student debts. Maybe there's something else there. Maybe there's 2 auto loans, whatever. For most people, we're going to see they have bank accounts, they have some credit tools, and they probably carry some debt here. Even if it's good debt, all the better. So our income statement, we have our various sources of income. We're also going to have our budget and also a debt plan, whatever. This is pretty much the basics that most people talk about, putting together a budget and all this stuff. So how does it all work? This is what a financial system looks like. Okay, this is our relationship between our balance sheet and our income statement. Here you can see we have money coming in and it's taking this path, right? And it's going like this. Here we have our living expenses and it's coming down. We're going to use our credit cards for that. And we're going to float them for about 45 days before they eventually get paid. So what's going on here? This is what I want to talk about. What we're doing is we're taking some debt that we have. Let's say that there's some debt in a mortgage. Well, we're going to take some of that debt and we're going to put it into this line of credit. Why are we going to do that? Well, this is what's going to happen here. As we're making money, we're going to make that money and it's going to come in and we're going to park it in this line of credit before we do anything with it. And as we have living expenses occur, we're going to schedule out our credit cards in a way, and we're going to use them in a strategic way, which allows us to float those expenses for up to 45 days. And so that money is going to sit here for 45 days before it gets paid. And so what's happening is our money is coming in, it's bringing this line of credit balance down so that and we'll talk about that more in just a second here. But then after that stage, that money comes out and it pays our bills. That money comes out and it makes a contribution to our savings. So what's going on here? What is this really all about? So the difference is all about how that debt is structured. So right here we have an amortized loan. That means that, let's say, well, let's keep on for the mortgage. In the mortgage, your first 5 to 10 years, you're paying in your monthly payment, you're paying at least 90% going to interest. Over a scheduled loan, you're paying all your interest up first, and then you start paying off principal. A lot of people know this. And so what's going to happen here is you're going to take a chunk of that debt and you're going to place it in here. And the whole goal is so that now instead of 90% going towards interest, only 85% is going to interest. And on a mortgage, let's say your mortgage is $2,000 a month. Well, you're going to have a significant change in how much of your money is going towards principal and how much is going towards interest. So therefore, you might see something like in the very beginning, let's say $80 is now going from is now diverted from interest to principal every month, paying off that loan quicker. And so what happens here is we put it into this line of credit. In that line of credit, obviously you're paying, well, maybe not obviously, there's not a lot of people who understand this part of it, is that in the line of credit, you're charged interest based off of your daily balance. And so if you're constantly bringing this daily balance down, you're going to be paying less interest here. So the spread scenario comes in to where you take debt from here and you put it into a scenario where you're going to pay a significantly less amount of interest in order to rapidly build equity here. Now this strategy is a really powerful way to pay off debt quick. You can pay off a mortgage in about half the time, and you can save yourself thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in Santa Cruz. In an area like Santa Cruz that has a high real estate value, you can literally save hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of that loan. And all that money is therefore diverting back into your net worth. And so that's what all this is all about. It's not about making more money. It's about retaining that money. And so it comes to do with these spreads again. Grow equity faster, pay less in interest, and create this spread. So this is kind of one of the major things that I'm going to teach in the Santa Cruz Financial Academy. And what this video is really about is a lot more to kind of reach out, do some networking, tell people what exactly it is that I'm doing, and try and build some of these working relationships. And because of that, I want to kind of go into something a little bit more personal. And I want to talk to you about who I am. And, really, I'm a lover of nature. I'm a world traveler. I'm a waterman. So how did I end up taking a year of my life and going deep, deep, deep into studying finance and money and all this stuff? If it wasn't to get rich, what was it for? And why am I up to all this? Well, I'm also the loving uncle to 6 beautiful children. And it is those children and their parents actually who really inspire me to do what I do. And the whole mission of this business is to bring economic security to Santa Cruz County, household by household. That they often say that change comes from within. So when we take a look at economics, what does that mean? Well, I believe that means that change comes from within the individual, within the household. How can we structure households so that they understand how to manage their money better? How can we bring that security through individualism? I love this quote here. I put that in as one of my favorite thinkers of all time. Lasting things must test their wings in little dangers before they transform the world in a big way. And, basically I got into this business because I wanted to build community, because I wanted to work with my friends, and it all started off with, oh yeah, let's flip some houses. Like a lot of people, let's flip houses, and to me that was all about, well, my sister's an interior designer. My best friends are all builders. Man, let's do this. Let's work together. And so I've realized over kind of sitting here over the last 12 months, I've had to do some serious research, and it's kind of put me in this isolating bubble in my room where I've really had to just hit the books and understand what it is that's going on, how investments work, how cash flow works, how all this stuff is working. And because of that, it's kind of created a lot of isolation for me. And so this year, I'm really looking to grow this business by growing the relationships. And so I've been putting this video together really to reach out to different people in the community, to show them, what it is that I'm doing, to see if there's any other like-minded individuals who really want to participate in making an impact on these economic problems that we have. The high cost of living, not really being able to manage expenses, and of course, this crisis we have in the world with global warming, war, and all these things. They're really all rooted in economics. Money tells a story, and that's what this really is all about. It's changing the lives of those who work very, very, very hard in order to make all this stuff, all this life, just a little bit more livable. So thank you for watching. I really am grateful that you took the time to check out this video. Feel free to reach out to me at any time.